Welcome, friends, to Total Health Channel and breaking news, spelled with a breaking, as in putting the brakes on. A lot of things happening that we don't want to go there, and so please consider this information. I heard recently a video, excellent, done well, about rebooting Adventism. Okay, well, this is about when you want to reboot the page, it comes up better, clear. Well, uh, I think similar ideas, but need to understand the history and where we're going with this. Ellen White said that we should be preparing for what's to break on the world as an overwhelming surprise. That's in Prophets and Kings, a book that, by the way, she did not call her book that. Uh, Pacific Press changed the title after she died. I don't think that was good. We're missing the main point. Not going to go there right now, but uh, she, her title, the Captivity and Restoration of Israel, was based on Jeremiah 30, verse 3. And in it, in that chapter, she also, well, not she, it's verse 11, Jeremiah 30, verse 11 says that God's going to make a full end of all other nations. I don't want to be here when the full end is made, and it's about us being a covenant-keeping people. God came to Egypt to take his people to Sinai and made a covenant, give them the promised land, and he later said, "Return, I'm married to you." He regarded the covenant as a marriage, and this is how the wedding parables fit. We need a better understanding of those wedding parables. They are high destiny if we get it right, because the 144,000 are virgins in Revelation 14:4. They have to be the wise virgins to get in the wedding. That's the only explanation for how you can have that many people as virgins. And we get to travel with Christ wherever he goes in eternity, following whithersoever he goeth, it says also in that verse. But to do it, we have to be the wise virgins, and Matthew 25 doesn't tell too much about how. We think, oh, all we need is the Holy Spirit, the oil. Well, it's not as easy as that. Everybody thinks they have it, you know, and so we're missing Luke's wedding parable. I've never heard a sermon on it, but I'm getting ahead of myself, and we need to explain what this overwhelming surprise is, because Amos 3:7 says God won't do anything without revealing it. It's all revealed, basically, and the very next verse, in fact, reveals it. But I've asked many teachers and preachers, have only found one Bible teacher that understood what the next verse is without looking. He said something about a lion's roar, and yes, it is. Christ is the Lion of Judah, and when I read this a long time ago, I didn't get that connection for quite a while. And then, who will not fear? Well, why should we be afraid? Okay. Well, the things that are happening right now are going to bring us into focus with that, I believe, because the president of Turkey is Erdogan, said he's urging 57 Muslim nations to siege Israel. And that's really the headline from Zechariah 14, verse 2, that nations are going to be gathered against Jerusalem, houses rifled, women ravished, and half the city will go into captivity. Not a very good situation for them, but most Christians and Jews think God honored his word by bringing the Jews back. I'm seeing that's not the case. God didn't bring them back. The UN gave them free land, and that's what they went for, and they really don't care about God. I learned this from a Messianic rabbi. And the truth be told, God told them, if you walk contrary to me, I'll punish you 7 times over. And Ezekiel 4, verse 5-6 says that they were in apostasy for 390 years. Ezekiel's asked to lie on his side 390 days, each day for a year, that Israel was in apostasy. But if God's going to punish them 7 times over, 7 times 390 years is 2,730 years. And Sennacherib came in 722, so the math is easy. 722 from 2730 is 2008, but no year zero, 2009. And in that year, the Pope Benedict comes to Jerusalem. Well, Rome was assigned to flee, so they were not even free to return then if they were listening to Christ. Okay, and I believe that big stuff is coming. All this was coming into focus in, I believe, the last 10 years. since the Pope was in Congress, gay marriage in the Supreme Court, the Iran nuclear deal, also in 2015. Sun was darkened. Moon turned to blood on Passover in 2015. And the San Andreas movie was released. I believe that San Andreas movie is more truth than poetry. The devil knows what's coming, and he has scripts to Hollywood, just like Outbreak movie was about the you know what epidemic that we had. So anyway, just want to share with you where we're going and what's going to be happening, because God has revealed it, I think. Not in a dream or vision to me. I've got my information just like you can get it from the Bible, okay? And the point is, though, that in 1888, God sent a special message to this church. Ellen White testified of it. She went to camp meetings with Jones and Wagner, the pastors who brought that message. She said that at that time they were preaching the Sabbath until they were as dry as the hills of Gilboa. And I hear it a lot today, Sabbath, 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 okay? Well, we do what we want pretty much. But anyway, I'm seeing that when the General Conference leaders who did not accept the 1888 message wanted to get rid of her, they sent her to Australia to get rid of her. And she founded Avondale College, wrote some of her best books then, and came back about a decade later to appeal for reorganization. They voted it, but did not do it. And 2 years later, in 1903, they voted a hierarchical structure or organization like the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church has priests, bishops, archbishops, cardinals, and pope. We have pastors and presidents of conferences, of unions, of divisions, and general conference pope, who travels the world like the Catholic pope does, telling people what to do. Ellen White did not have that in mind. She thought that conference leaders around the world could get together in their area. People in South America know the culture, they know what's working, they can share what's working, and do fine without having to be told by a visit from some you-know-who that what is we need to be doing. So anyway, I think made a big mistake, and she said so, okay? You have volume 8 of the Testimonies for the Church, page 250. You remember it because it's 8 times 250 is 2,000. Second paragraph says, "How has the faithful city become a harlot? My Father's house is made a house of merchandise, a place whence the divine presence and glory have departed." Now that's Ellen White's response. We became a harlot. And a year later, they incorporated it officially, their organization, corporation. Ellen White said, we cannot step off the platform God has established to form a new organization. That would be apostasy from the truth. Well, they did it. And in the next year, 1905, she said the apostasy which is developing and increasing will continue till the Lord descends from heaven with a shout. Now that's pretty solemn stuff. And I had a book that I got. It was published in Special Testimonies, Series B, number 7. And my book had a man's name in the back of it, so I called him up one day. I said, "Why is your name there?" He said, "Well, I was custodian of the General Conference, and they called me up one day, said that we have some books are extra, we don't need them, we'd just like you to stoke up the furnace." They came down and threw Special Testimonies, Series B, in the fire. Well, he choked the fire out as soon as they walked out and printed them under his own name. Thankful for that, for me to get it. And she actually foretold it in her comments on Jeremiah 36 chapter. If you get the Bible commentaries, volume 4 of the Bible commentary, page 1159, she said, this chapter, Jeremiah 36, is a record of historical events that will be repeated. Let all who desire to receive warning read carefully. Well, what's it about? The warning is that Jeremiah sent a scroll to the king, and he cut it up and threw it in the fire. That's what they did with her book. If we want to be warned, we should know that they are trying to hide something from us, the fact that they are not doing what Ellen White wanted, basically. And the church will be in apostasy. If the church is going to be in apostasy till the Lord comes, we got to get out at some point. I'm going to tell you when, okay? Because it's embedded in our messages. First angel's message is a time of impending judgment. And when you see Muslims taking Jerusalem, the first angel's message is on target because she said Jerusalem is a representation of what the church will be if it refuses to walk in the light God has given. So seeing it attacked, hey, we're about to get persecuted. Fear God, give glory to Him, time of His judgment is impending. And I believe you're going to see that before the end of April. I could be wrong, but I'll give you the reasons why. And if so, 98 or 99% likelihood that the earthquake she saw in vision at Loma Linda will be real. Buildings, great and small, falling to the ground at Loma Linda. Houses, I'm quoting Zechariah. Excuse that. But she said it seemed that the forbearance of God was exhausted and the judgment day had come. So yes, a time of judgment, and the message with buildings falling to the ground is Babylon is fallen. Okay, that's not rocket science, and the fact is that the church is intimately involved in what they call Adventist health care, which is not health care at all. It's medical care, and medical care is a form of bondage. If you have to go to the doctor every 2 weeks or month and get a prescription for a drug that could kill you or could give you an adverse drug reaction, as Ellen White says, drugs change the form and location of disease. They do not cure. Well, church leaders didn't believe Ellen White not to teach pharmacology at Loma Linda. She wanted it for training missionaries with natural remedies. I feel cheated now that I didn't get a good education in natural remedies instead of drugs, which are, as I say, a leading cause of death. I took medical literature through the U.S. Senate until one senator said, you know, you're wasting your time. They own us. Speaking of donations that the drug companies make to their re-election. So, bad situation. And in Revelation 18, we hear a message, Babylon the Great is fallen. Come out of her, my people. Be not partakers of her sins. Receive not of her plagues. For by her sorceries, and that's not a good translation, the Greek word is pharmakia. By her pharmakia are all nations deceived, and we have deceived the nations because we think we're okay, when in reality people that take drugs for this and for that and for something else die younger than if you had learned what the reason was and you avoid that food, that drink, that smoke, or whatever. It's just a choice. Disease is a choice. What we put in our mouth, that's where trouble comes. And so we've made those choices, and we do it year after year. We have to live with the consequence, which is early death or trouble in the process of dying. So I'm just trying to be honest with you, and basically we're online for big troubles at Loma Linda, and when Loma Linda is on the ground, I would not want to be a church leader. Okay. In fact, Ellen White saw persecution quickly at the end times began. This is not waiting for a Sunday law at all. Ellen White was asked at Loma Linda, waiting at a railway station by Will Ross, what's it going to be like at the end? And she said there would be a sudden storm of persecution. And the Adventists were like a windstorm blown down, but after the storm there was a calm, and the Adventists arose like a great flock of sheep, but no shepherds. The shepherds were never seen again. I would not want to be an Adventist preacher, but I know that Christ said, smite the shepherd, the sheep will be scattered. And we see in Malachi, the 3rd chapter, the Lord will come suddenly to his temple, and he will purify the sons of Levi. The Levites were the religious teachers. And today, we have leavened the bread. That's basically why the true witness tells Laodicea, tells the Agalos. Sadly, bad translation again from Catholic translators, obscuring the fact of preachers. But it says, to the angel of the church, each of 7 churches in Revelation 2 and 3 are to the angel of the church, when really it's the Greek word agalos means messenger. It's to the preachers. They're the messengers to the church, and obscured by the fact. But if the preachers are blind and naked, what hope do the people in the pews have? They don't know as much as the preachers shouldn't anyway, usually. But the point is that God is going to hold the preachers accountable. And if you love your pastor, share this video with him and tell him to get interested in something beyond smooth sermons every week. Here's a book I've written, The Earthquake and Seven Seals. The earthquake is the one that Ellen White saw, and that happens when Muslims take the city of Jerusalem. Because the Lord is going to roar from Jerusalem, heavens and earth will shake. Okay, and that's going to initiate the end time for Jews, Muslims, and the whole world, basically, Adventists. We see it encoded and embedded in the wedding parable of Luke 12:36, where Christ says, "Be ready when I come and knock, that you open immediately." What's the knock? Well, the only other place where Christ knocks is for the Laodicean church. Everybody knows it. Gentle Jesus always knocking at the door of my heart. Well, good meaning, it's all right, but that's not the full meaning, because a Revelation is about how things end. And that church ended in an earthquake that destroyed the city of Laodicea. You can Google it and search it out if you want. But so the point is, be ready for an earthquake. And I'm going to tell you how to do that right now, okay? Because I'm saying that within, probably before the end of April, we're going to see an attack on Jerusalem. Maybe even, tomorrow, Sabbath, whatever. I'm going to try to get this up and post it tonight or tomorrow. And please share this with other friends on your email list and so on, because this is something that is, as Ellen White says, an overwhelming surprise. It's not something that we know or intuitively can guess at, because it will look like, what in the world happened to the church? Because they're more than $1 billion, about $1.3 billion in debt. And by the way, $1 billion is a big number. It's 1,000 millions. If you add 3 more zeros to 1 million, you get $1 billion. And we're more than that, a debt over that big hospital that we didn't need, shouldn't have, or want. And God's going to deal with it, okay? Because this is not an investigative judgment anymore coming up, okay? She said soon, none know how soon. Well, it wasn't soon for them. They died back then. But it's soon for us, okay? And I believe that we're going to see it, and we want to be ready and prepared to leave the GC. In fact, I would recommend it, because if they're going to be in apostasy till the Lord comes, and he's going to come as a thief, it says in Revelation 3:3. God came as a thief to Egypt. He executed judgment on Egypt and took their slaves, freed them, and they went to Sinai and made a covenant. It's going to happen again to the U.S. The U.S. is like Egypt. Egypt enslaved Israel and threw their babies in the river. We've thrown 63 million babies in the trash. And we have abominations in Congress, etc. When the Pope comes telling us what to do, what does he know about it? If he was so smart about running a nation, why do all his people want to come to America? Not to tell us what to do. He wants us to go with the UN, and the UN is going to allow him to be the leader of the world. That great moral leader. Well, I don't think so. The Bible says homosexuality is a sin, but I had a priest show up in an emergency room who was alcoholic, but he wasn't really sick, didn't need to be in the hospital, and I took him home, and he told me that half the priests are homosexuals, and that was about 60 years ago. So where are they today? Worse than that, probably. So I just say we're coming to a time of judgment when God is going to sort it all with just one act, okay? And all that one act will allow sorting of when he's going to allow, first of all, the Muslims to take Jerusalem, and then he's going to roar from Jerusalem, chase the Muslims out, but that earthquake is the knock for the wedding, and Christians that understand it can open to him. How do we open? I believe we need to seek a covenant for the 7 days of Passover. He's going to roar at the beginning of Passover, I believe in May, which happens to be on Monday night, May 12, just as the disciples met with Christ before their Passover, and they celebrated the Passover. Favorite author Ellen White says, this is Desire of Ages 652, second paragraph, as he, Christ, ate the Passover with his disciples, he instituted in its place the service that was to be the memorial of his great sacrifice. So I'm suggesting to you to have the Lord's Supper, have some friends over if you like, fellow believers or whatever, invite them to your house. It would really be great if the churches were open and did it, because we would be expressing faith in that appointed time of Christ. Moed, appointed time. And Ellen White has this to say, Christ's Object Lessons, page 34, that Christ was the foundation of the whole Jewish economy. Its impressive services were designed to teach the people that at the time appointed, one would come to whom the ceremony pointed. Well, God came as a bridegroom to Egypt and took Israel to the covenant, and later said, I'm married to you, return, in Jeremiah 3:14. Christ is going to do similarly. He's going to come and knock, and this is about his wedding, but it's got to be different than going to Sinai and getting a dumb bride that worshipped a calf 40 days later. God is making the wedding, and this time the timing is Passover, but the wedding feast is scorned by the remnant. Okay, catch this. In Matthew 22, verse 6, the remnant treat the messengers like me badly, and I've been walked out of church several times, several different churches in northern Arizona, and and I could explain it to you if you want to call me, but nothing heresy. I'll tell you one right now. It was Sabbath school on the book of Daniel, and Daniel's it was Daniel 7 that we were talking about and discussing, and verse 17 says, these four beasts are four kings which shall arise out of the earth. I explained that in that chapter, Belshazzar was the king, and Babylon was not arising. It was falling, it was degenerating under Belshazzar. So that could not be for Belshazzar's time. It's for the end time. And the lion with eagle's wings, I believe, is the UK and the US. We're the eagle, they're the lion, okay? And Russia is the bear. That's clear. One thing after another. The last beast will be a dragon-like beast, and it has a little horn. That's the papacy in the European Union. So it all fits well, okay? Application. And so when the next chapter, Daniel 8, when the great horn breaks, the four little horns come up toward the four winds. That's the four countries, We are the greatest country, just like you see in this picture. I think Trump is the great horn on that goat, because in Bible times they cut off a horn to blow through it and make a trumpet. Trumpet, okay, from the horn, okay. And that's what makes the goat great, is that horn. But then the horn breaks prematurely. I think he'll be assassinated because he's not favorable to the UN and New World Order, or the Pope's leading. And maybe that's why he's had such a hard time with the media, etc., because the media is owned by you-know-who, etc. So that's just long story short. And I believe, though, that to be ready for that event, an earthquake, we need to be ready for unleavened bread and to offer to Christ for the wedding week. Just as Israel ate unleavened bread for 7 days, we need to consider spiritually, the spiritual application is unleavened topics. Because when Christ said, beware of the unleavened bread, he wasn't talking about crackers, it was about doctrines. That's in Matthew 16, verse 12. So, in the very next chapter, by the way, he said before he comes, Elias or Elijah must come and restore all things. And Elijah comes in Malachi 4 and 5. Remember the law of Moses with statutes and judgments. Behold, I send you Elijah. Those statutes and judgments have a sevenfold emphasis in Ezekiel 20, where it is statutes, judgments, Sabbath, statutes, judgments, Sabbath, statutes, judgments, Sabbath. 7 is a mark of God's signature for end-time truth, like Revelation has 7 churches, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 thunders. So beware of the sevens. That's God's signature that this is important. And so this is a collection of 7 seals that have a contextual link to those topics that have been edited out of not only Adventism, but just about all of Christendom, but we need to understand them, and I've just given you a couple examples, and I will, for those statutes and judgments enjoin the annual Sabbaths, or called feast days, when Israel would go down to Jerusalem and feast on a lamb, and they would have a spiritual feast and fellowship with friends, as well as eating the lamb physically. and so they call it feast days. But we don't make anything out of it. We just follow the papacy that abolished them. Okay, well, not good. We need to restore the statutes and judgments, which Ellen White says Christ gave to Moses religious precepts which were to govern everyday life. These statutes, she said, were explicitly given to guard the Ten Commandments. They were not shadowy types to pass away with the death of Christ. They were to be binding upon men in every age as long as time should last. And they enjoined those annual Sabbaths. So we should be doing it. And so, when Christ said, "No man knows the day or hour, but as the days of Noah," the flood came with Passover timing, but in the second spring month. It was a provision, I call it a 9/11 provision. In Numbers 9, verse 10 and 11, if a man took a long trip, couldn't get back in time for Passover, he was not excused. He was to keep it a month later. That was a provision for travel. Well, God is good. He makes provisions, but we ignore it too often. And basically, I'm telling you, if Muslims attack Jerusalem, we really ought to be honoring the Lord's Supper on Monday night, May 12, and then watch and pray and to stay awake. And I am no better than disciples. I fall asleep, but I've learned how to do it. Because in Egypt, Exodus 12, verse 10, they were to eat the Passover lamb and leave nothing till morning. We can do that spiritually by reading the closing chapters of Desire of Ages, the Last Supper. Just like Ellen White says, as he, Christ, ate the Passover with the disciples, he instituted in its place the service that was to be the memorial. Start with that chapter and read it. Read the chapter. If there are other people around, read one paragraph. Let them read a paragraph. Everybody can play and participate. And at the end of the chapter, pray, "Lord, help us to be like that." And then the next chapter, "Let not your heart be troubled." Gethsemane, Annas and Caiaphas, Pilate's judgment hall. See what Christ bore for us and pray that we can somehow respond and be here for him at his time. I believe if we do that, we can make a covenant with him with the topics that we are offering. In Bible times, the person that wanted a covenant offered 7 of something, like Abraham offered 7 ewe lambs to Abimelech for a water well. God offered 7 feast days. They were like a vacation in Jerusalem. Got to go down there and enjoy the fellowship and others that you don't see usually, because they don't have cell phones and cars and etc. They lived a rural life. So we got great opportunities if we would reboot Adventism in the right direction, because otherwise it's going to be gone, and I mean big gone. I would not want to be a church leader, and I believe they're going to be lost out of the picture. In Matthew 22, verse 10, when the king sees a man without a wedding garment, he said, "How did you get in without a garment?" And he was speechless, and because the wedding garment is provided, there's no excuse in that culture. And he was cast into outer darkness. I think the pastors who are just going along milking the system for tithe, but not preaching strong and under truths, ask them to get a book or get this book. Hey, let me explain. For $5.95, less than you pay for a Big Mac, you can get a book that has you prepared for, I believe, being among the 144,000. Go to my website. 4 words: health, happiness, and destiny.com. You have to spell "and" out, but 3 words: health, happiness, and destiny.com. And you can do that, and you will. And if you also wanted another interesting book, it's How It All Ends. That's $2.95. It's a short, smaller book, but together they cost less than $9. But you get a bonus as well, a video that is high value, worth hundreds or thousands of dollars if you're taking prescription drugs. And you probably know a mother or father or somebody that's doing this. So get this video. On Amazon, it is $9.79 plus $4 shipping. You save the shipping cost, and the book is less than the $9.79. It's only $8.90 if you get both books. And you get the video link that you can share easily. Okay, that's how easy it is to use. And I'm running out of time now. It's nearly half hour, but hey, this is the best half hour you've spent in a long time. God bless you, and we'll see you again. Keep an eye out for what's happening in Jerusalem. God bless.